So why did we conduct this research? Why did we do it? A power analysis for Black education in Britain was initiated to bridge a significant gap in existing literature. So there's lots of literature around, and there's lots of focus around the dynamics of the impact that Black people experience within the education system. We have discussions on curriculum, we have discussions on disciplinary policy, but there was an imbalance between what we saw and how we addressed that with regards to power and the imbalances of power and how to give power back to Black pupils, Black teachers, Black families, Black community organisations. And so what we did was we wanted to ensure that we were able to move beyond the point of just discussion and move into the area of action. And in order to move into the area of action, we have to speak truth to power. We have to take power back, and we have to move beyond just identification, but giving power back to the organizations, the people that are necessary in ensuring that the education system that we always talk about as being disparaging is actually something that we can now see as something that we aspire to. So the goal was to speak truth to power, to take power back. And this reflects the recommendations and the key findings that we have seen.
So what did we do in terms of methodology? So we facilitated 6 focus groups, and we had a total of 80 participants. We had a focus group for pupils, we had one for parents, we had one for teachers and community professionals. We did a mixed teachers and pupils, and then we also did one that was for parents with children with special educational needs and disabilities with the help of Francis. And lastly, we had an in-person focus group, which was open to all the aforementioned groups. We also distributed a survey, which was completed by 215 respondents. So we asked different questions to the different groups, but they were all aligned within the themes of power, education, and race. One of the questions that we kept consistent was, as a Black teacher or parent or pupil, how much power do you think you have in challenging racism within your school or your child's school for parents? And this made for like a really good comparative analysis, this question. So 42% of the respondents identified as Black Caribbeans and 30% as Black Africans. We acknowledge that Black people are not a monolithic group and that we are diverse, and even within those demographics, we are diverse. So we analysed the data and came up with the following 5 findings. So the first finding explored some general themes relating to barriers of empowerment. We found that pupils, their parents and teachers felt empowered through inclusion and when their culture was recognised. Some parents noted the positive impact of parent-school and parent-teacher relationships, whereas others felt like despite trying to build these connections, they often felt like, as one parent described, they were hitting their head on a wall in relation to their child's educational journey. Pupils actually described how just simply listening to them actually goes a very, very long way. We also found that available and accessible and relevant resources were found to be a source of empowerment, and that links to the curriculum, which is in our next finding. So if resources are available but not relevant, then they're basically inadequate, is what we learned. So our second finding was around lack of representation amongst the teacher workforce. So with representation particularly declining at senior levels. So in England, 2.6% of classroom teachers are Black, 2.1% of assistant head teachers are Black, and 1.3% of deputy heads and just 1% of head teachers are Black. Pupils in the focus group highlighted the positive impacts of having Black educators, and it's imperative that Black pupils see themselves reflected in authority figures and role models in school. So one pupil spoke about how her Black teacher cared about her outside of what was happening in school. So during the murder of George Floyd, they checked in on her well-being and just cared about her beyond the school walls. And another pupil spoke about just how having one Black teacher made a really positive and significant impact on their educational journey. So educators and parents and all pupils, so every group emphasised the critical need for diversifying the curriculum. And pupils in particular talks about how they want to learn more about positive Black stories and Black successful stories. So our third finding looked at how racism is addressed or mostly unaddressed in schools, and we explored overt and covert racism. So we found that pupils and parents felt more empowered to challenge racism when they had support and as collectives. So this came through really strongly. So not only did black pupils and their parents frequently report that consequences or disciplinary action taken in response to racist incidents were not proportionate to the severity of the offence, they also felt like if they had been the perpetrators, they would have faced harsher punishments for the same offences. So many participants highlighted the disparities in the discipline they faced compared to their non-black counterparts. So more than one respondent actually told us that just hanging around with friends caused them to be labelled as like gangs or intimidating, and they did not observe the same treatment to their non-black counterparts. So we also delved into this idea of the responsibility of black equity. So while black teachers, parents, and pupils play an integral role in advancing equity, the responsibility cannot rest solely on their shoulders. Achieving meaningful change requires the active participation of the entire school system. And research has long shown that black children's behaviour is often misinterpreted in UK schools, and this trend perpetuates racial biases. So these biases manifest in unequal disciplinary actions, as well as in this kind of like internalized pressure that some black children feel to counter negative stereotypes associated with their race. So participants in the student group highlighted this burden describing the expectation to kind of like disprove the stereotypes. And this dynamic is tied to the adultification of black children. In relation to teachers, as we all know too well, the additional tasks and unequal expectations placed on black teachers, while sometimes does feel fulfilling, can also feel burdensome and is not always reflected in financial gain or progression. One participant pointed out that black teachers are often assigned tasks beyond their official roles, such as organising Black History Months, a burden that's not distributed equally amongst their white colleagues. Equity in education cannot be achieved in isolation, and while black teachers, parents, and students are vital contributors, our efforts must be supported and amplified. So our fifth finding was around special educational needs and disabilities in schools. Responses highlighted a common sentiment that schools lack both the resources and understanding to adequately support black children with SEND. Many black parents reported experience a deficit model approach where teachers and administrators often focus on the perceived behavioural issues rather than addressing underlying SEND needs. These biases can lead to an unfair cycle of blame where a child's SEND is attributed to parental failings. One parent described being blamed for her son's behaviour by his school, which deflected responsibility by suggesting that she needed to just do better as a parent. Such experiences reflect a documented pattern in which black families, particularly those navigating SEND, face heightened scrutiny and stereotype-based assumptions. A more inclusive and cultural responsive approach is needed, and actually a lot of change is needed. And with that being said, I'll pass to Chibuzo to expand on these in our recommendations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to some of our recommendations. It almost seems utopian to say the following, but if we are not full of faith and hope, aspirational and optimistic, it will never be manifested. The recommendations speak to a transformation of our education system, a system that must be reformed to truly serve the diverse tapestry in this country, namely the black community. Our targeted recommendations were born from the urgent need to dismantle the mechanisms of inequality and to redistribute power within the educational landscape. Now, I'm particular with going through the recommendations that I focused on the various different stratas of society. So we've gone a top-down approach. So we've gone from government to Ofsted, to local authorities, then to school governors, parents, teachers, and pupils. We aim to catalyse a comprehensive transformational system that elevates and amplifies black voices and experiences. Today, as we share these recommendations, we invite you to join us in this crucial endeavour to move from acknowledgement to action. Let's begin a journey towards a future where the educational system is not only inclusive, but also empowering for every member of our society. So, recommendations per strata. For government, firstly, to address the critical underrepresentation in education, we propose embedding race equality performance targets within the DFE recruitment, reflecting the diversity of the community served. This starts with ensuring a targeted percentage of the 6,500 new teachers mandated each year. 2. Enhance initial teacher training by mandating comprehensive modules on equity, anti-racism, and cultural competence, preparing educators to foster inclusivity from the outset. To revise the national curriculum to mandate content that celebrates diverse histories and contributions beyond token representation, ensuring all students see themselves reflected in their education. Furthermore, we recommend creating a funding mechanism that rewards schools demonstrating effective anti-racism initiatives, aligning incentives with equitable educational outcomes. I'll go back. For local authorities, make Black pupil send analysis mandatory to ensure resources are equitably distributed. Local equity monitoring panels should be established to review data on exclusions, attainment gaps, and teacher diversity. 2. Develop localized equity benchmarks with oversight to address any disparities proactively, ensuring education outcomes are reflective of the community's demographic makeup. Going back to Ofsted, and I appreciate the fact that, Doctor, you appreciated these Ofsted recommendations. As a teacher, I've had a few things to say about Ofsted over the years. Ofsted, incorporate equity requirements into the criteria for an excellent rating. An excellent school cannot be one that has high levels of disparity for Black pupils. The two can't equate to each other and they can't go hand in hand. So incorporate equity requirements into the criteria for an excellent rating. Redefine success metrics to include schools' progress on equity measures, making accountability anti-racist in practice. Mandate cultural competency training for inspectors. And I will say that again. Mandate cultural competency training for inspectors, ensuring they elevate schools, ensuring that they evaluate schools not just on academic performance, but on inclusiveness and fairness. For community organisations, fund initiatives to build robust family-school partnerships and set up community-based parent partnerships, empowering Black families to navigate and influence the education system effectively. Now, it's crucial that this is a funded activity. And as we've said, and as we've shared earlier on, that there is too much burden on Black organisations alone to solve all the ills with the small budgets that they have. So this should be a funded activity. So we're calling on funders, we're calling on other institutions to be able to fund Black organisations to actually do the crucial work. Now, BEO has been supported by an amazing advisory board, and this advisory board contains amazing organisations that are doing this work, but they need more. They need more support, they need more funding to be able to carry out the essential work that, to be fair, government, local authorities and school governors should be doing. Okay. For school governors, require equity and anti-racism training for all school governors and establish equity-focused monitoring structures to ensure sustained accountability in schools, diversity and inclusion efforts. For schools, conduct independent equity audits and set up anti-racism accountability committees, making schools proactive and responsive to the needs of Black pupils and their communities. For Black teachers and parents, empower Black teachers through mentorship and curriculum autonomy, and equip Black parents with legal and policy literacy to effectively challenge systematic bias. Now, that support, especially the legal support, is something that I find very, very, very crucial. As a Black teacher, and I was also a Black parent, I felt a lot of parents would come to me and say, my child is experiencing X and Y in school. Can you help me? I am queen of writing an email. I will write an email to a school that will make everybody start shaking. And so because I had this experience of advocating for my own child, and I will speak about that, parents would come to me and ask me for help. And so that legal assistance, that policy assistance, and that support for parents and teachers is very, very crucial. And lastly, for Black pupils, establish pupil-led equity councils with real power and develop peer-led advocacy training to amplify pupil agency and ensure their experiences shape the school policies. So to conclude and to reiterate, it's time to speak truth to power. By implementing these recommendations, we can transform our education system into one that supports the empowerment and success of Black pupils, Black teaching professionals, Black families, and Black communities. This is the education system we must build. Thank you very much.